Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'm going to have to get sucked back into the Tory conference and Sunak's speech, as there was incredible scenes yesterday as it transpired that the government were quietly deleting some of their transport policies from the website. Talk about announcing stuff for the headlines and then simply abandoning them afterwards. You're supposed to do it like a few months or years later, not the next day. But I'd also like to discuss the democratic outrage at Sunak's moves as well. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So I produced a video yesterday discussing whether I believed the report that Dominic Cummings really had advised Rishi Sunak to do mental stuff and that Sunak had agreed. I can now say much more confident, I do believe this. This is nuts, even for the Sunak-Cummings double act. So the main carrot related to Rishi Sunak announcing the cancellation of the Manchester leg of HS2 while he was in Manchester was twofold. First, the line would go into central London. And second, there would be £36 billion spent on different transport projects in the north, which apparently was supposed to be better. It unravelled almost immediately. First, the line into central London is dependent on finding private financing. Well, it may not get private financing, so this is not a commitment from the government. Then there was the pre-recorded message from Sunak about his decision to cut HS2 back even further, only the video was recorded in Downing Street, which meant he recorded it before he travelled to Manchester for the conference. But just the day before his speech, when he'd been in Manchester since the weekend, he said no decision had been made yet. Not only was he claiming he'd gone from no decision to decision plus lots of detailed plans about the replacement policy, but there was a video proving that the decision had been made earlier. There was no explanation for this from the government. But then the alternative projects for the north themselves, the funding for northern transport projects, so-called Network North, seem to involve an awful lot of projects in the south of England. In fact, about half of them seem to be in the south of England. Less Network North and more have a laugh at those mugs in the north who've been voting for us. This feels like a bet to me. How blatantly can they piss on our shoes and still convince us that it's raining? I reckon Michael Gove instigated the bet. He famously had some very unkind things to say about people from the north of England as a younger politician. It also transpired that two of the projects proposed, one in Manchester, ironically, and another in Nottingham, had already been completed 9 and 8 years ago, respectively. A bold move promising an infrastructure project that's already been completed before you even became an MP. Some of the others were projects that had already been announced before, sometimes years before. In other words, the government had already promised to complete those projects as well as HS2 to Manchester. But then yesterday descended into complete farce as the government started removing projects from the Department for Transport website. They just started deleting. Oh, yeah, we promised this thing. Oh, these are all the projects. Oh, let's just start deleting a few now. Sunak had his headlines. It's time to start reneging on the promises immediately. I mean, yes, that is doing mental stuff. How on earth does anyone think this is how you win voters over? Did they think nobody would notice? I get that the average voter isn't going to notice themselves, but the media and Labour noticed, and they are now explaining all this to the public. Well, some of the media anyway, but Labour all over it. This is shambolic. Absolutely has the Dominic Cummings hallmark. I absolutely believe he is behind this now. I was minded to believe it before, but that was largely circumstantial evidence. But nobody would advise Sunak to do this other than Cummings. Not even that imbecile who advised the Prime Minister film himself breaking the law in a moving car would have advised this. Because the government can do nothing to rescue this now. They think they're screwing Labour over. But they're shooting themselves in the foot. Even when they decide that the situation needs rescuing, that it's gone wrong, they can't. Which they obviously clearly don't think it needs rescuing at the moment. At the moment, they think they're being terribly clever. Oh, we're going to lose the election anyway. We'll just screw Labour over. It's like, no, you're screwing yourself over for years to come. Consider that the Tories tell a lot of lies in an election campaign. 40 new hospitals or £350 million a week for the NHS, all that business, right? So the entire basis of their strategy is to convince people that they're telling the truth, that they will deliver the nice sounding investments that they are claiming. How is that possible now? The government announced a load of transport projects to go alongside Sunak's speech. The same speech which made breaking promises to voters from the previous manifesto. Some of the projects promised have already been completed. Some of them were announced years ago, so they're not alternatives to HS2. Some of them are new policies, but they're pulling them the day after the announcement. Against a background like this, you'd never believe anything in a Tory manifesto, would you? What's happened here is that Sunak is completely out of his depth. He has no political background. He just randomly became an MP, then somehow convinced a similarly unsuitable Prime Minister to make him Chancellor. That's his political background. No interest in it before becoming an MP, by his own admission. So he has no idea how politics works, having only experienced politics during the broken years. And he's thrust into a situation where Labour are on course to win the next election. Now, this hasn't been the case for nearly 20 years. Hardly any sitting Tory MPs have experienced this situation where they are likely to lose the next election. So Sunak was completely clueless about how to deal with it. He thought he could con the public with his 5 pledges. Didn't work. He then had the idea of pretending to be a tech bro. That didn't work either. Then he thought he could win voters over by promising to kill more pedestrians. That didn't work either. So he reached out to Dominic Cummings. From the point of view of a political novice, Cummings thinks outside the box and has success on his CV. The 2016 referendum, the 2019 general election. He approaches Cummings for advice, who advises him to do mental stuff. Right you are, says Sunak, and promptly does mental stuff, and here we are. And then you go back to the Tories' slogan, long-term decisions for a brighter future. That was their conference slogan, long-term decisions for a brighter future. They changed their decision after less than 24 hours. That is not exactly what I would call long-term. But then there's the democratic outrage angle as well, and this is much worse. See, it's not just that Sunak's breaking a manifesto promise. Tories do that. They do it all the time. He's done it several times. Boris Johnson's done it. They do it, right? You just hope that the next government, after a delay, picks it up again. But it's not just that he is unilaterally, this has not gone through cabinet, right? He's done it on the advice of Dominic Cummings, a disgraced former political strategist. It's not just that he is unilaterally cancelling a project which has been backed by 4 of his predecessors, which he stood on a platform of. Every Tory MP stood on a platform of delivering HS2. It was in their manifesto. He has no mandate from the public for this. But he's also salting the earth to make sure nobody can do it in future. In order to proceed with the Manchester leg of HS2, the government, of course, bought land to lay those tracks on. Sunak is now going to sell this land, presumably at knockdown prices to Tories, in order to prevent the next government going ahead with the plans, albeit with a delay, because they won't have the land to do it on. And no, they won't be able to just buy it back. I'm going to talk more about this from Labour's point of view on my Labour Vision video on the Labour Social channel this Sunday, rather than get bogged down into it here. But for now, suffice to say, no, there isn't a credible way Labour can do much about this. Compulsory purchase orders, no. But I want to talk here about the democratic outrage. Sunak has no mandate for this. What's more, it's clearly not something his party want. And he's preventing the next government from seeking a mandate to continue the project. It's one thing to say you're not going to keep your manifesto promise. That delays it. It's another to completely block your successor from doing so. Parliament authorised the buying of the land for this project. Parliament at the very least, should authorise its sale. And actually, they should not authorise its sale because they know they've got no mandate to do so. But Parliament is not even going to be asked about this. Sunak is just going to do it. This directly contradicts the manifesto he stood on, that his MPs stood on. It has no public mandate. It has no public support. And Sunak will not even get Parliament to approve of the move. This is as undemocratic, objectively as undemocratic as it comes. That it is even possible for the government to do this is proof that we do not have a robust democratic system where Parliament genuinely is sovereign. Legally, it's considered sovereign. If this can happen, of course it is not. It has to be changed. The system must be changed, and it must be changed before the Tories can even think about winning another election. Absolutely must. The general election cannot come soon enough. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.